UFC 29 defense of the belts took place on December 16th, 2000 at the Differ Ariake Arena in Koto Ward, Tokyo, Japan. I have no idea why the poster says December 22nd, we're just going to move past it. But this is the last UFC event of the year 2000, provided that you do not count the 6-hour marathon on New Year's Eve. But this is the final UFC event to be held under the SEG banner, the last event to be promoted by UFCJ, and in January of 2001, SEG will sell the UFC to Zuffa. You will know the names of Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta, who will put Dana White in charge, and the rest, as they say, is history. But history will be made here tonight as Tito Ortiz and Pat Miletich defend their titles. Let's get to it. Let's get it on. We open with a video package, Western philosophy and Eastern tradition, power and strength, technique and execution, worlds collide as East meets West. It is time to get real at UFC 29. We go to downtown Tokyo to see people line up outside the building, and we move into the arena, or what sure looks like a green screen supposed to be the arena, or the tin can shed that we're in here tonight. It's supposed to hold about 1,200 people, sold out. And I don't think we have that. But we run down the card. I'm looking forward to some of these fights, some of these names on the card. Chuck Liddell, of course, Matt Hughes, Evan Tanner, and Matt Lindland, an Olympic silver medalist at the Sydney 2000 Olympics. He makes his debut here tonight. James Wermy is in the back to go over the rules and regulations as we take a look at the ring girls for the evening, and commentary awkwardly tries to skirt around calling these ladies attractive without being disrespectful towards them. It's a real minefield, I don't know what to tell you. But one of my favourites is up first, Chuck Liddell. He will be in the opening fight. The Iceman is back, and we all rejoice. They run through Chuck's history. We've only seen him a couple of times. His debut was a decision win in the prelims of UFC 17. It was not on the pay-per-view, so we did not review it. But he then lost by submission to Jeremy Horn. I tried to block that out every day. And it was in the final seconds of the fight as well, man. Come on. But that was at UFC 19. He then TKO'd Paul Jones. We're just going to ignore that it was a cut that stopped the fight. But that was at UFC 22. He's back here again tonight to take on Jeff Monson, who has a win over Tim Lasik by decision on the prelims at UFC 27. But Chuck Liddell's out here in the blue trunks for the first time. This is like V1 Iceman shorts. He's almost got it down. He's almost pieced it together. We're getting there. But my least favourite cliche from Mike Goldberg talking about how this is a chess match. I just don't like it. I hate it. You hear it so much. And Mike Goldberg also has to throw in the obligatory warning to the audience at home already, right out the gate, that the audience will be quiet for this one. Of course they will. The arena's blacked out, you know why, it just is what it is. So Monson shoots for the takedown because he does not know about Chuck Liddell's elite takedown defense yet. Chuck sprawls and Monson pulls guard. He tries to hold underhooks for dear life, and Chuck just stands back up, prevents another takedown, back to the feet. Monson with a body lock, he manages to struggle and get the throw back, and Chuck immediately back up to the feet. Monson hanging on again for dear life. He tries another takedown. Chuck sprawls, preventing another takedown. I cannot stop laughing. Chuck is the absolute GOAT. Like, zero control time for Monson, barely even a takedown. And now Monson is starting to look tired, now getting walked down by Chuck Liddell. Not where you want to be. A low kick from Chuck that makes a nice noise in the building. And Monson shoots. Chuck sprawls. Surprise, surprise. He tries to pull guard, but Chuck just stands up, not getting caught up in any of that. And I don't really like the camera work. I'll just throw this in here. Some unnecessary zooming in and out. And also, like, looking through the cage, just unnecessary cuts. Another shot, another sprawl, need to throw that in there, as Tito and TK sit and watch at cage side. We get some pretty slow stand-up. Chuck is just dictating the action, stopping multiple attempts to take him down, shrugging off the body locks. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. Chuck Liddell just as an archetype of fighter, elite takedown defense combined with the top level kickboxing, a lot of knockouts, and against the best fighters as well. Like, I can't wait to actually run through Chuck Liddell's entire UFC run. Like, really looking forward to that. But we get to the second round, more leg kicks from Chuck. Monson trying to grapple whenever he can. He just keeps getting hit with low kicks. Chuck lands a right hand. Monson attempts the double leg. You know how it goes already. They end up in a clinch. Monson lands a couple of nice knees in there, to be fair, but Chuck fires back with a couple of right and left elbows and a nice jab on the break. Another low kick from Chuck. Another and another. Monson's leg is purple now. This is still a pretty new strategy in UFC. Whenever anyone uses like heavy low kicks, they talk about Marco Huas and Paul Varlins from UFC 7. People didn't really abuse the tactic back then like they do now. And it's worse now because these kicks aren't even on the calf. Oh, by the way, another shot and another sprawl. But these kicks aren't even on the calf, they're on the thigh. So it's not even as bad as it is now, but it's still pretty bad for the time. We get more low kicks. Monson's leg just looks grotesque now. Another shot, another sprawl. Chuck keeps Monson backed against the fence, so he has the space behind him to actually sprawl. He doesn't get backed up at all by Monson, always keeping his back off the fence. Another low kick by Chuck, and it actually gets caught by Monson, who then tries a single leg. Chuck stuffs it, of course. Monson then pulls guard with seconds left in the round. Chuck just stands back up, and that brings round 2 to a close. It's 2-0 to Chuck. Surprise, surprise. So Monson's in the corner before the third, and he cannot put any weight on his left leg. As he then comes out to the third, Chuck Liddell just targets it, because of course he does. If this was a video game, it would be flashing red, except in real life it's just this deep purple colour. Again, I use the word grotesque. It looks horrid. But Chuck targets the leg, and it's just more of the same from these guys. Chuck ripping the low kicks, Monson half-heartedly attempting takedowns and just getting shrugged off. Not really a whole lot of hands being landed. Monson again attempts the single leg, and I know it sounds like I'm just like going at this ad nauseum, but I genuinely can't comment on stuff that's not happening. This is literally it. Monson would go for a takedown, Chuck would just pat him on the head and say, "Nice try, buddy, try again later." Another low kick, and then he comes up with this high kick. The camera misses it, zooms in on Monson's face, and all you see is Chuck's foot come in from the side of the frame. I hate this production team so much. But Chuck catches him flush with a high kick. I wish we'd seen him throw it, you know. But Liddell shoots, and I shit you not, Chuck doesn't shoot, sorry. Monson shoots and somehow ends up bottom and north-south. What the fuck is going on? Chuck just stands back up. We then look at Tom Foley in the crowd, who appears to be mouth breathing, sitting next to another mouth breather. That is not ideal, but Chuck stuffs some more takedowns, and with a minute left, he just starts letting some hands go. Couple of attempted roundhouse kicks, and he ends the round on top of Monson. The 25 people in the audience applaud like it's a game of golf, and Chuck Liddell picks up the unanimous W. His record now moves to 4-1, 3-1 in UFC. And greatness awaits the Iceman when the Zuffa Takeover happens. Looking forward to seeing his development over the next few years. After that, we then have an interview with him. He says he's happy with the performance and the fight went according to plan. As you would imagine, it was a unanimous win. He's just sad he didn't get the knockout. But next up, we have Matt Hughes, Dennis Hallman, and we've seen Hughes before, but if the name Dennis Hallman rings a bell, you might remember him from UFC 133. He's the guy who wore a pair of Speedos to the cage, which Dana White was not happy about, but we'll save that for another time. Before this fight, we get some Matt Hughes propaganda. We then find out that Matt Hughes' only loss to this point was against Dennis Hallman in Extreme Challenge in 1998. It was Hughes' first MMA fight. Hallman had a little bit more experience. He was 11 fights deep at that point, and he was able to win in 17 seconds. He subbed Hughes, so he's looking to get that win back. The fight begins, and I'm not kidding, right? I just said Dennis Hallman beat him in 17 seconds in their first fight, Extreme Challenge, 2 years ago. Fast forward 2 years, we're in Japan, the fight starts, and Jesus Christ, it's all over again. We start with a slam from Matt Hughes. The camera fucks up the shot again. And by the time that we switch, Hallman is throwing up a triangle. Hughes picks Hallman up, slams him again, and Hallman rolls through for an armbar and wins. Mike Goldberg says, how did that happen? Because they love Matt Hughes, right? They love everyone from the Miletich team, but they love Matt Hughes. Goldberg saying, how did that happen? And then we have to rewatch the fight a few times. Of course, it was so short. It was like 20 seconds. They show how Hallman was actually in control the entire time after the first slam. So he targeted the arm and he set this up whilst Hughes didn't actually know what was happening, right? He faked the triangle. They then went up. As he's going up, he switched to the arm, grabbed the wrist, and on the way back down, as soon as he landed, he was able to roll because he had the wrist control. He was then able to get the armbar immediately, and they don't often do this, or at least like in my memory, I don't remember them doing this that often. They ended up drawing like little yellow markers on the screen and talking you through each stage of the submission and how Hallman got it, which I thought was nice. Bruce Beck, remember him? Jeff Blatnick done a pretty good job of explaining this blow by blow, so I've given commentary enough grief. I'll give them praise when they do this right. Hughes and Hallman actually do shake hands after the fight. I feel as though I should bring that up. There was no bitterness from Matt Hughes having been beaten by Dennis Hallman twice in 37 combined seconds. But in his post-fight interview, Dennis Hallman actually brings up the correct word, and it's composure. He stayed composed. He was able to grab the arm on the way back down. He then thanks Jesus for his victory. But what he says there is very true. A very composed performance. He easily could have panicked after the first slam, but no, he didn't. Cool head, looking for the finish constantly. He knows he submitted him early before, and he done it here again. We then get some promo for the New Year's Eve watch party for the year 2000. 6 hours of pay-per-view showing off the highlights from UFC past. Not just from the year 2000, but from the entire back catalogue of UFC fights. Oh joy, oh bliss. We then get some more promo for UFC 30, which returns to New Jersey, returns to Atlantic City, and returns to the Trump Taj Mahal. Little do they know, a new leader shall be at the helm for that one. James Wermey in the back looking at Pat Miletich in his locker room because he does not want to talk just minutes before his fight. So we'll just get the camera crew in here and talk right next to him whilst he tries to get ready for his fight. Matt Hughes in there, or maybe Mark Hughes, I think it's still Matt, but he's in there. Chuck Liddell also spotted in there. We get a return next up that I'm looking forward to a whole lot. Evan Tanner is back. He's up against Lance Gibson, who we've seen once get a KO win over Jermaine Andre. Who is that? Good question. Evan Tanner, we've seen just a couple of times. UFC 18 and 19, he impressed twice. So, just the thing, we don't have him back. He has 2 wins, 1 submission, 1 knockout. He showed some pretty good clinch work in his previous fights, and he's really the only fighter giving Wanderlei Silva any competition in terms of who's the best clinch fighter in the sport right now. And I know what you're thinking, Pat Miletich has mastered clinching opponents against the fence, and that is true, but Wanderlei and Tanner actually get finishes off of the clinch, so they're better. Sorry, but they are. Low kick to start this fight off from Tanner, and we then get straight to the clinch. What do you know? Where both men are able to land, but surprisingly. Now, I was shocked at this, because I'm writing the notes as I'm watching, and I'm like, yeah, Evan Tanner, best clinch fighter, probably outside of Wanderlei Silva, and even at that, it's like 1A, 1B. There's not really that much of a difference. They both do really well in there. We clinch to start, and I'm not kidding. I actually think that Lance Gibson gets the better of the clinch work to start. I think better knees, nice uppercut. I think he actually beat Tanner in the clinch here, but Gibson, who done better than I expected, gets taken down immediately. Because I think Tanner was also shocked, because he then decides to take it to the mat, a really nice throw. Commentary call it a foot sweep. The camera's too close to the action for me to see, so it actually cuts off the footwork. I can't tell. Again, you would need more than two hands to count all the production mishaps that happen here, but a nice takedown nonetheless. Tanner into the guard of Gibson. He then moves to side mount, and Frank Shamrock is sitting there in the crowd. And Frank retired after UFC 22 with that win over Tito. Great fight. And you think, see when Dana comes in, and like, you start thinking about the possible fights that could have happened. Like, Chuck Liddell is coming up, Evan Tanner, of course, a rematch with Tito. Randleman even moves down in weight shortly after Dana comes in. Of course, the Sakuraba fight in Pride that he was there for, that he teased himself at Pride 6, and then just nothing happened with that. So it's a shame that we never got some of those matchups, but we've moved into the middle of the cage as Tanner looks to transition, and he makes it to side mount, where he lands these short elbows, and the camera, in this case, does a good job. They zoom right in on this. It looks disgusting. It looks so bad. He lands maybe 3 elbows with the camera zoomed in on it. Hurts Gibson bad. The elbows just looked sick, like just nasty. And they keep on coming. He lands elbows and punches to the body, the elbows to the face. I can't stress enough. Horrific. And it's just turned into a beatdown now. Gibson's corner is counting down the seconds like, oh my God, just please survive. And commentary also now counting down the seconds as Gibson tries to hold on. Tanner gets to the mount. He starts landing ground and pound. Just some, again, nasty straight punches. And Mario Yamasaki steps in, finishes the fight. Evan Tanner is terrific. I love watching this guy. He has now had 3 great performances, and he should have been back a long time ago. Again, UFC 18 and 19, great performances, great wins. He should have been back before now, but at least he's here. I'm looking forward to seeing more of him, because Dana White has some sense and will bring him back. So, and I'll give credit to Gibson here. At the end, it did turn into a bit of a one-sided beatdown, but at the start of the fight, he did do pretty well in the clinch, and of course, it's sort of skewed by what I was expecting in comparison to what happened. But whilst the fight was on the feet, he kept it pretty competitive. So, you know, Tanner got it to the ground, and I can't stress enough how disgusting those elbows looked. The camera was zoomed right in on them. They looked horrific. It was a great win. It was competitive enough on the feet. As soon as it got to the ground, Tanner had it all in control. A great win. 3-0 in the octagon for Evan Tanner. Terrific stuff. Fabiano Iha is back by nobody's demand. Last time we seen Iha, he got the win back over Laverne Clark with a quick armbar. But prior to that win, we'd seen him in Pride get KO'd by Frank Trigg. And in his prior UFC fights, he of course lost to Laverne Clark, but that one was unfortunate, stopped due to a cut on Iha's face when it looked as though he was about to be on to a win. You know, the referee, it was Yamasaki's first fight. He stepped in and stopped it. It was a bad call because Iha was about to win, but he didn't. He lost, and he also lost to Dave Minay. That one was much more convincing. And now you thought nobody asked for Fabiano Iha. How about Takase? Who asked for that? He lost in the first round of the truly terrible UFC 23 tournament. Prior to that, he got dwarfed and destroyed by Jeremy Horn. And then prior to that, we seen him at Pride 3 against Emmanuel Yarbrough, the big fat guy from UFC 3. They had a freak show match, which Takase won almost by the skin of his teeth at the end because Emmanuel Yarbrough fell over and couldn't get back up. Takase starts with a front kick, which misses only by, a mile. Iha then gets the single leg, drags him from the centre to his corner, and Takase closes the guard, right? Iha then stands up whilst in the closed guard, pulling Takase up off the ground. Iha then starts pummeling Takase. Takase will not release the closed guard. He doesn't try to kick off Ihai or separate or even block. He just keeps the guard closed even though it's not benefiting him in any way whatsoever. Truly strange. Ihai pummels him to a finish, because why wouldn't you? And I truly have no words for what I've just watched. Speechless. Ihai, in his interview, just says that he picked his spot to take down Takase. He actually has a nice interview. I think I've given him some grief before. I didn't actually know that he was half Japanese. That's why he's got the flag there. And I don't know what I'll do with that information, but I thought it was interesting enough. And I feel bad that he lost in Pride, because he get knocked out by Trigg, and it's fighting in Japan probably meant a lot to him. He said as much here, but we've seen him in Pride, and it's a shame because it meant something to him, and to see him get TKO'd by Trigg at the time was pretty nice. But now seeing this interview, I kind of felt a little bit bad for him, but it's nice that he at least got the win here. We then get some more promo for both the New Year's Eve Marathon and the UFC 30 event at the Trump Taj Mahal. We now have James Werme in the back. He is with Tito Ortiz, who doesn't want to make mistakes and just let stuff happen. Stick to his game plan and just let stuff happen. These are his words, not mine. Stick to the game plan and just let shit happen. Okay. Werme says, you've been out a while, any rust? And he says, no rust, all chrome, ready to shine out there. Okay, Tito. And he then says to expect a takedown, expect elbows, and expect it to be done within 3. Let's see if he can get that done. Matt Lindland is up next. And by the way, see the way Pat Miletich was acting? You'd have thought his fight was next up. But it's not. And he still didn't have time to talk to James Werme. But Matt Lindland is up next. He takes on Yoji Anjo. Lindland, in his UFC debut, an Olympic silver medalist at the 2000 Games in Sydney. Yoji Anjo currently 0-3 in MMA. You know how this one is going to go. We've actually seen 2 of those losses, one against Tank Abbott at the first Ultimate Japan event, and one against Murillo Bustamante at UFC 25. And I'm not joking. None of this video has been a joke. They have some sort of ceremony at the introductions. They hand Yoji Anjo an envelope, and what do you think's in it? If you had to guess. We don't find out. There's no payoff to this bit, but we genuinely will never know what was in it. We can only assume what was in it, and why did you get handed an envelope at the start of the fight? I don't understand. But Lindland stuffs the double leg attempt from Yoji Anjo, because naturally you shoot on the Olympic silver medalist. And Lindland gets his own inside trip with the front headlock. Mike Goldberg says that Lindland kind of looks like Randy Couture, and now I cannot see anything else. I can't focus on anything else. This guy looks exactly like Randy Couture in there. And Lindland quickly makes it to mount up against the fence using the elbow and forearm on the chin and neck of Anjo, some intermittent ground and pound. Lindland starts another spree and tees off on Anjo. Big John has seen enough, as have I. He steps in and stops the fight. Lindland wins his UFC debut, 2 minutes and 58 seconds of the very first round. Lindland, in his interview after the fight, says he hasn't trained wrestling since the Olympics. He's been so focused on MMA training with Randy Couture. He's actually here as well. He is happy with Lindland's development, and we will be seeing more of him in UFC. Who is him? Both of them. We will be seeing more of Randy Couture, and we will also be seeing more of Lindland. So in our next fight, we finally have the champion, Pat Miletich. He's up against Kenichi Yamamoto, the winner of the aforementioned terrible UFC 23 tournament. We get some propaganda for both guys. Who do you think had the better video package, if you just had to guess? Miletich, if you guessed Miletich, you would be correct. Okay. You would expect this guy to destroy Yamamoto, which begs the question, why are we having this fight? Why is he a contender for the title? why is it that Pat Miletich's last fights have been against like the rookie Alessio and now Yamamoto, who is completely buns? Why? Stat padding at its finest. But, you know, you still have to get the job done, of course. So we're expecting Miletich to destroy Yamamoto, but you know Miletich, he'll drag this thing out for as long as possible. Blatnick on commentary says that both men have been described as methodical fighters. You do not want to hear that, ever. Methodical in a 5-round expedition. Miletich, when he makes his entrance, is flanked by Jeremy Horn, Jens Pulver and Matt Hughes, and I tell you what, this team is pretty insane, to be honest. And this is the thing with Miletich, he's a great coach, and you can say a great fighter, it's just that his fights typically end up being boring as fuck. So we kick off this one. Yams shoots, gets sprawled on immediately. Miletich lands some knees on Yamamoto, lets him go, and we stand back up. Miletich then picks up Yamamoto and slams him down. Some nice work here from Miletich, who then just stands back up again. Begs the question, why'd you take him down? And I have no words for whatever the fuck Yamamoto is doing. He has this karate style, very side-on. He attempts a single on Miletich, who defends the takedown, obviously, and gets him on his back. Miletich landing a nice right hand, follows that up with some more shots, and then he just stands back up again. And I get that, like, Yamamoto got a submission in the final of the UFC tournament, at UFC 23, again, a terrible tournament. But I wouldn't say he's a great grappler, or even a better grappler than Miletich. But Miletich on the feet lands a nasty combo on Yams as we go back to the ground, and Miletich is dominating this fight, as you would expect, as round 1 comes to an end. So round 2 starts with Miletich taking Yams down, and then just stands back up immediately. He then lands a nasty left on Yams, just a mean left hook. He then evades the high kick and lands a low kick in return. That was nice. Miletich is fine. He's a fine fighter. He's just really boring. But Miletich sprawls on Yams again. He lands more ground and pound just before standing up again. Miletich pieces up Yams and lands another combo. Yamamoto tries a takedown because all the other ones he's tried have been so successful. Miletich counters with a guillotine and gets the win. I have no clue what happened here, but he starts limping after the fight. No clue. And I have criticised Pat Miletich in the past. This was a great performance from him. Definitely his best one yet. Again, you can argue the strength of the competition. He's came up against better competition before and struggled, or at least made it look a lot more difficult. And again, I've criticised him in the past, but good lord, if he got injured and Yamamoto somehow ended up becoming the champion, I would have cried. So thankfully, and I can't believe I'm saying this, thank God Pat Miletich wins and retains the belt. We then have an intermission before the main event where we run some promo for the UFC video game, and holy fuck, this card was going good, right? Really good. And what do you know, UFC fuck it up again, this time. Not putting on a prelim fight from this card. No. Putting a prelim fight from the last card 6 weeks ago. Remember my last review? If you haven't watched it, go and watch it. But my last review, I had thoughts on the Mark Hughes debut fight on the prelims that they chose to put on the pay-per-view, and it was terrible, okay? It was god-awful. So now, we get to watch the one that wasn't good enough to be put on the card ahead of the tragic Mark Hughes debut, where he had to stand there stun-locked whilst his opponent had a hold of his leg because he didn't know how to escape the hold. we get to watch the fight that couldn't make it on the card ahead of that. So you know this is going to be bad. Ben Earwood versus Chris Little. Earwood with the immediate takedown into half guard. Little with the headlock forced Earwood back to guard. Into the Miletich corner, into half guard, into side mount, back into guard. I'm being serious, this is the entire first round. And then we just move into the second. I'm not kidding, that was the entire first round. So we get into the second, and Earwood with another takedown. After both guys miss a big strike. God help us, we couldn't get one big strike. And we then get a takedown to start the round. Into half guard, then side mount, back to the guard. Some very sporadic ground and pound. And that's the fight. Terrible. Fucking god-awful, terrible. Nuke the prelims. Just diabolical work to put this on a pay-per-view that people paid money for. I can't stress enough to you how bad this is. But Earwood wins and the crowd boos because this was utter shite. And I'm so glad this is the end for SEG, genuinely just when things were going well. How many times can you sabotage your own card for no reason without bankrupting yourself? You deserve bankruptcy. Fuck off. We then recap the rest of the night, which has been decent. Prior to that bullshit that we just saw, only one decision, and it was Chuck Liddell. Which is unreal, because how is Chuck Liddell in the dullest fight of the night? How does that work? But the card has been pretty good. We even had a good Pat Miletich performance, which is insane. Speaking of Pat, we see him in the back and he's miserable, having just defended his belt, naturally. He says it wasn't a successful night for the team and he was fighting out there out of anger and, oh, Jesus Christ. Can you not just be happy that you won? He said he wanted to punish Yams as much as possible. He then shouts out some people at home and says that the foot has been injured for a while, so naturally he would just take Yamamoto down, then stand back up, putting repeated pressure on the sore foot. Great game plan. But he said he'll rest and come back at a later date. And he will be back. But it's main event time. Yuki Kondo challenges Tito Ortiz for the UFC middleweight title. They recap his one and only UFC fight against Dantas, where he got a really nice knockout over the Brazilian to get him this title shot here. We then run through Tito Ortiz's UFC career, and I tell you what, this guy, right? People obviously recognise the contributions of Tito Ortiz to the sport. I feel like it mostly comes from the years after the Zuffa takeover, though. This here is his real contribution to the sport. This time period here, he is one of the only fighters that have made this journey through the Dark Ages bearable. I'm not kidding. Again, none of this video is a joke. This is all real. Tito, Shamrock, duct tape, and a prayer has been holding UFC together over the past couple of years. This here is why Tito Ortiz is a legend. So, Tito makes the walk with TK behind him holding the middleweight championship, and there's some sort of reality TV show waiting to be made here with Tito Ortiz, TK, Chuck Liddell, a young Dana White. If we could get Tank Abbott back, like, to be friends with this lot again, you would have the full ensemble for White Boy Summer in Huntington Beach. It's a reality TV show waiting to be made. But the fight starts, Yuki lands a high kick on the guard and then a flying knee which knocks down Tito Ortiz. Holy shit, did not see that one coming. Tito against the fence doing his best to clinch. He does get the takedown and hits the ground and pound immediately against the fence. This is only like first 40 seconds into the fight and Jesus Christ, what a start. Tito pummeling Kondo against the fence. Kondo works back to his feet only to be taken down again by Tito. Tito gets the left arm underhook on Kondo, gets his head under the arm as well. all whilst he grabs the choke on Kondo with his right arm, and Kondo taps to the Cobra choke. Tito Ortiz successfully defends his UFC championship for the first time. Everybody in for the team photo as the snow begins to fall inside this tin can shed that we call an arena. Chuck, Dana, TK, the whole gang. Tito has a nice interview where he's actually legible the entire time and calls out Renzo Gracie as the only guy that could challenge him. Motherfucker, call out Sakuraba. He already beat Renzo. That is a fight that would feed families. But anyways, this was really good stuff. Very entertaining main event, and commentary recaps the event. We then speak to a Japanese fan who speaks very good English. He says he hopes UFC comes back to Japan more often, and he'll only have to wait about 12 years until UFC 144 to get another UFC event in Japan. We get the full contact fighter moment of the night. It was the knee from Yuki Kondo, and Jesus Christ, I mean, obviously with the power of hindsight, we know there's never been a Japanese champion, so you can't get too excited when these moments happen, but that was completely out of left field. I did not expect that whatsoever. That was just insane to see that at the very start of the fight. We then get the tap out moment of the night. Of course it was the Dennis Hallman sub. What else would it be? We then, I suppose you could say the main event. That was a nice choke from Tito, but we then run some ads for, you guessed it, the New Year's Eve Marathon and UFC 30. We recap the fights and sign off. Domo, arigato, and sayonara. That brings UFC 29 and the SEG era to a close. So I'll probably make a full video with my thoughts on the SEG era, and I'll spare my entire thoughts for that video, and that will force me to make the video. But as for this event here, which is what we cover, this was without a doubt, oh yeah, and by the way, here's Tito Ortiz hitting the Gravedigger celebration, but without a doubt this was the best Japanese event that UFC have done so far, easily, bar none, and it was the only one not to be called Ultimate Japan, and this was ultimately the best event, bar none. And I'm just going to pretend that they did not interrupt 2 title fights to show us a 6-week-old prelim fight with no contact, just transitioning between half guard and full guard. Absolutely disgraceful performance from both fighters, and disgraceful from UFC to put that on a pay-per-view, knowing that it was bullshit, sitting on it for 6 weeks and showing it anyway. It is promotional malfeasance and they deserve bankruptcy. But the rest of the show was great, and Chuck Liddell didn't get the knockout, but it wasn't like a boring performance. It was the dullest fight on the card because there was no finish, but it was fine. It wasn't one of his best, but it also, like, it wasn't one of his worst. What are you gonna do? He tore up the leg of Monson, who's a decent grappler. He had a gold and silver medal at ADCC's submission grappling before this fight to Chuck Liddell. He since went on to get more medals. He's a decent grappler, but Chuck, as we know, insane takedown defense. He never let it get to the ground, and he still went for the knockout. It's not as though he just stalled and waited for the decision. He still tried to get the KO win. You know, it would have been nice if we seen the high kick that almost done the job, but sadly we didn't. Somehow Chuck Liddell's in the most boring fight on the card. I can't believe I'm even saying this in a card that features Pat Miletich. We're going to pretend again the prelim doesn't exist. Absolute prelim slop. It's disgusting. I'm trying not to get annoyed here. They almost had a perfect run. I'm not kidding. This card was actually pretty fun to watch. Next up, we had Hallman and Hughes, which was amazing. It only lasted 20 seconds, granted, but the technique from Hallman was very impressive. He could have panicked going up for that second slam, but he held it together and got the submission. And to have fought Matt Hughes twice, finished him twice, subbed him twice, and done it all in a combined total of 37 seconds is hilarious and very, very funny. Both of them put together. And the fact that it made the rest of the Miletich camp that mad that they couldn't even enjoy a title defense is amazing. Evan Tanner, impressive again, this time not in the clinch, but after the takedown, those elbows and side control were just nasty, and I'm happy that we're going to be seeing more of him he's been around for a while, but he's about to actually start getting booked, which is ideal, and I don't know why he's been missing for so long, but let's just be happy that he's back. Iha and Takase after that. Takase's terrible. And Iha brutalised him for 2.5 minutes while Takase looked as though he had no idea what he was doing. And just a side note on after some research on Takase, this guy will beat Anderson Silva and Carlos Newton in Pride. That has to be fixed. It has to be fixed, because I don't care who you are. In 3 years' time, this guy's gonna, he has a 4-7-1 record, which is flattering because he's terrible. We've seen how bad he is. One of his wins against Emmanuel Yarbrough, who fell over and couldn't get back up because he was so fat. That guy is going to beat 11-1 Anderson Silva. And then the year after that, beat former UFC champion Carlos Newton. Granted, Newton's on an inconsistent run, 13-8. That doesn't represent how good he is. His losses are to Anderson Silva, twice to Matt Hughes, Sakuraba, Dan Henderson, and he lost in his first ever fight as well. But Jesus Christ, even on an inconsistent run, he cannot be as bad as Takase. They have to have fixed that fight. And the Anderson Silva fight as well. A horrific thought. And I do not care who you are. If you are this bad, 3 years of training and copious amounts of losing, you're not beating Anderson Silva and Carlos Newton. It just is never happening. How has this happened? I don't even want to watch it, right? I'm going to have to watch it at some point, but I don't want to. It's messing with my mind right now that it's even reality. He's so bad. But a good win for Iha. Lindland, dominant in his debut, destroyed Anjo. Not a good night for the Japanese. Lindland, first round, 3 minutes. Fine performance, nice and quick, always good. Miletich had his best performance ever against Yamamoto. Despite Yamamoto having no success in the grappling, he continued to shoot and got subbed. But he also got pieced up in the feet too. So, it is what it is. Miletich effectively mixing the martial arts here and almost Jens Pulver style. And I'm glad he's taken a page out of his book by letting his opponent stand back up and having the fight on the feet. It was a nice surprise and a nice win. Didn't stop him being butthurt even after destroying Yams because Matt Hughes lost, which is always funny. And then the main event was fun for the 2 minutes that it lasted. Surprise in the first 10 seconds from Yuki Kondo, but ended up Tito getting a nice sub. And a unique sub. You don't see a Cobra choke every day. This was a really good event. This was really good. And I'm glad that we at least ended on a high note for SCG. I know I've said they deserve bankruptcy, and they did. Because they make dumb decisions. Just like from a production standpoint, the self-sabotaging, the rug pull promotion, there's a lot you can criticise SCG for, and a lot of it is just self-inflicted damage. And I don't know the inner workings of the issues they're dealing with internally. I know the political pressure externally is of course affecting them, but I don't know how much money they have or why they don't. Fighters can have standout performances and then you never see them again. How? Whilst we keep these jobbers around that nobody cares about or wants to see, is this John Peretti's fault as the matchmaker that we don't see the guys that are actually good? We just book our friends? Is that how this works? And before I go scorched earth, because I don't want to have another rant after that prelim fight, because this card was actually really good in spite of that, I'm happy that we at least ended on a positive note, somewhat of a redemption arc for Pat Miletich, who have cooked at every turn for being boring. And it actually took Jens Pulver coming in for me to soften my stance on him. But it's nice to see him actually be somewhat entertaining in a fight. Tito Ortiz, who almost single-handedly has been trying to pull this plane up out of the nosedive that we've been in, finally gets the title and a defence under his belt after the loss to Frank Shamrock. And this actually brings me to a point here, round the elbow to get to the rest. I would rather all these shows be good than bad, obviously, okay, because I have to sit here and watch them. Obviously, I want them to be good. But there's been so much bad stuff, especially recently, that I'm just so ready for the Zuffa takeover. Like, whoever is in charge of everything right now, Bob Marowitz, John Peretti, everybody, just leave. Please. It is time. And I'm so thankful that Zuffa is about to take over. But I'm not going to completely write off the past 7 years, because there has been some good stuff in there over the last 33 UFC events that I have reviewed. I've reviewed 33 of these events and 13 Pride events as well. So many hours. Please like and subscribe. But the amount of good stuff and the legendary fighters, the legendary moments, without Bob Marowitz and SEG, it wouldn't be possible. And I can look back now at some of the terrible stuff foisted upon us and look back at it and laugh that 83-year-old Ron Van Cleef getting matched up with Royce Gracie. It's funny now. It was not at the time that I watched it. But through all the bullshit, there was enough good over the last 7 years that it deserved the good ending that it got. There was enough good fights. There was enough good tournaments. There was enough stars made. And we might not have held on to all of them. But the one that we're left with, Tito Ortiz, the spiritual successor to Tank Abbott, one of UFC's biggest stars who never became champion, Tito Ortiz, ending the era as the champion, celebrating in the ring with his soon-to-be UFC president, soon-to-be his boss. He's currently his manager, but soon-to-be El Presidente Dana White, and his soon-to-be historic rival, Chuck Liddell. Absolute cinema awaits. And on that note, thank you very much for joining me on this journey through the SEG era of UFC. Thank you for joining me for this review of UFC 29. And it is only the beginning, because next time here on the channel we will be reviewing the all-new Ultimate Fighting Championship, a new era under new leadership, Dana White, Frank and Lorenzo Fertitta. We close the gate on what has been the era that made the sport what it is, the good, the bad, the ugly, the humble beginnings that became the inspiration for greatness that waited just around the corner. We close the gate on the pioneer era, and it is time to get real as the sport carries on and the UFC lives on to reach heights that were once thought impossible. Join me next time at UFC 30 as who other than Tito Ortiz sets the tone for the new year, the new era in UFC, as he takes on Evan Tanner in the main event for the gold. UFC 30 battle on the boardwalk. I'll see you all there.